the movie that's my number three that shaped my list, my travel list, is Eat, Pray, Love from 2010, directed by Ryan Murphy, starring Julia Roberts, Javier Bardem, Richard Jenkins, Billy Crudup. Quick logline: a married woman realizes how unhappy her marriage really is and that her life needs to go in a different direction. After a painful divorce, she takes off on a round the world journey to find herself. So, like you mentioned, every list on my movie has like a certain feeling that I associate with travel and what
Mhm.
pulls me into traveling. For me, this is, even though this movie, if listeners don't know, the Eat, Pray, Love basically is Italy, that's eat, love, that's, sorry, pray is India, and then love is Bali.
Mhm.
For me, this is on my list for the Bali part, even though I guess I've been to Italy and I grew up in India.
I was
So
gonna say, you've
there's
been to India? I didn't know that.
so this is really for the Bali part. And
Mhm.
with that part, to me, this is about travel being a way to relax, rejuvenate, self-reflect. I'd never really seen Bali on the screen until this movie. And it still kind of feels very relevant to me, even though I'm sure
Hmm.
Bali, since this movie has become a lot more commercialized, and it's probably hard to find those pristine kind of rice paddy fields
Right.
and with, Julia on a bicycle and what have you. But this is why this movie is on here, of that feeling of serenity, finding yourself a little bit, but
Mhm.
really more about the quiet reflection that you can get when you travel. And in my
Hmm.
mind, Bali represents that. So, but yeah, curious if you had watched this movie before, and have you been to any of these places? I know you've been to two.
Yes, it's I have similar to you. I've been to Italy a couple times and to India a couple times as well. One of the times
Yeah.
with yourself, which was
Yeah.
really fun. Have you show me around? Hope to go back to both of those places. And no, I've never been to Bali before, and also have always wanted to go there, and had not seen this film before until the podcast.
Oh,
So
wow. So I guess I can go maybe a little bit into why this movie and
yeah.
what about kind of Bali it captures. And I guess in general as well, the movie sort of starts in Bali. Like she, as in Julia Roberts, she meets this kind of medicine man person who has this prophecy and says that you lose everything and you'll come to Bali and then you'll find a new life. And that's
Hmm.
sort of what ends up happening. I don't know how real this is because this is based on the life of the person who wrote this book. Maybe it is all true, but I don't know. There is something cool about that kind of, you know, cosmic sort of
Like a prophecy. Yeah.
prophecy thing
Right.
that might happen. And it may not be so blatant, but there's something cool about meeting somebody who's very different from you in a foreign place that feels kind of incredible and says something and that changes your life. It doesn't have to be
Hmm.
a bold prophecy, but it just changes how the way you think about life, and
Right.
that has happened to me, maybe in not such a big profound way, but in little ways. So I think I really connect with that part. And then Bali is shot beautifully, and that whole sequence of leisure life and these, glam huts that they all live in, and all of that, is very beautifully captured. As a movie, though, I mean, this is not a great movie, I would say that. Like, I think it drags quite a bit. Julia's performance overall, even though I like her a lot,
Hmm.
I would say more than you do, as we've said on the podcast before. There's something, I don't know, very dry and stagey about her performance to me in this, in parts. That said, what the movie does do well at is in my mind, it does capture the essence of these three places. I've not been to
Hmm.
Bali, so I don't know, but the
Hmm.
other two places, it does capture the style and sexiness of Rome and the food and all of that, and then the chaotic yet peaceful
Hmm.
energy of India. So I think that part is done pretty well, but the movie meanders quite a bit. If I'm being honest, my favorite part of the movie is the Italy part
Yeah, me
because I
too.
think it's hilarious.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, right? Like, so much of travel is made by the people you meet. And I
Hmm.
think the connections that we see in the Italy part are the best versus the Javier Bardem romance and what have you in Bali sort of doesn't quite land in my mind and drags quite a bit.
Yeah, I had like I said, I'd never seen this film before. I'm a huge Ryan Murphy fan.
I know I'm
I
not that
watch
either. So
all of his
there's,
TV shows. I
yeah,
think he's one of the best TV producers, writers out there. And this had always been a kind of curio for me because he wrote and directed, and it was a big hit commercially. And just my aversion to Julia Roberts. And it was funny actually because I had kind of an aversion to this attitude of a very kind of selfish middle class to upper class rich kind of like white woman attitude that has, something to take definitely captured the zeitgeist for a while. And I think a lot of the things that I'd heard about just about the real author kind of turned me off. Though I'm curious to see Coyote Ugly, which is another movie based on her life before this. I always wanted to see that.
that's really fun, I would
Yeah,
say.
I want to see that movie. I love Paper Caribou. So and Julia Roberts being this main character, I was kind of in a way sort of predisposed to dislike this woman. And I didn't hate her as much as I thought I was going to. Actually, I sort of felt that she was sympathetic and I did feel for her,
Yeah.
even though it was a very selfish journey that she was on. I do feel that just because you are coming out of some situation that's a little more cushy than it might be for the rest of us out there, that doesn't mean that these people, rich people don't go through problems.
No.
Especially in the fact that in the film, they aged this woman up about 15 years. I think if they had stuck more to the real story, it would have been a lot harder to relate to a 30-year-old who's now able to just take a year off, get paid by a book publisher to go around and quote unquote discover herself for a book, which is what actually happened. They didn't really get into that in the film. And I think actually having Julia Roberts be older makes a little bit more sense. So surprisingly, I didn't have much of an aversion to her as a character as I thought. And it really did. The Italy part was great. I thought that not only captured the cities in Italy that I've been to that they captured in the film, but it showed her like meeting people from the place and trying to, even if it was a little bit like bumper sticker for sort of what Italy is, I didn't
Right.
feel it was like offensive or something. It was, she was kind of getting out there and meeting the people. I just thought it was odd in both the India and the Bali sequences. She sort of stayed away from locals, especially in the India. It was more like talking to other tourists. You didn't really get a sense of the Indian
I
culture as
mean,
much,
the
and same
Indian
thing in
girl
Bali.
is there, but it's sort of true though, because when you're at an ashram, you're
Right,
probably
right.
going to interact with the people over there. So it was very curated in that
Mm-hmm.
sense,
Yeah.
which to me is actually fine because India is so huge and complicated and complex that I don't know how you would ground the story if she was just all about herself roaming around. So
Mm-hmm.
in a way, they sort of contained it. But yeah, I see what you're saying though.
Yeah, it's like in Bali too, that turns into more of like a romance where like I don't really get a sense of Bali as much as okay, now I get it if I had like 10 grand to spend on a vacation in Bali, but I don't know what else beyond that it would be like. Though I will say Javier Bardem was so incredibly attractive in this
Oh,
movie.
he looks great.
Like I was like, oh my God, like have you always been this hot?
Yeah,
I mean, I
he's
don't think I've ever seen him this attractive at anything. I'm so used to him being these odd, sort of like in Bond or No Country for Old Men, who's got dumb
right.
haircuts and weird accents. He was just so attractive in this movie. I just and they had a nice little meet cute moment of him almost running her over on a bike. The movie definitely like started off kind of annoying in New York. I liked the Rome part a lot, and then it just was like gradually kind of lost interest and quality to me over time. It just became more and more kind of annoying, and the pace was really slow. So I agree with you; it was like probably a half an hour too long. But yeah, I didn't dislike. I kind of went into it being ready to dislike her and the character, and not that I came off loving her, or really empathizing with her a lot, but it wasn't some kind of revulsion to her. Though I will say it was very odd, like in the beginning, especially in the New York scenes, like the cinematography was so weird with like the lighting. And then I was like, who
Very
is this
weird.
DP? And oh, it's this DP that I really like, Robert Richardson, who does all the Oliver Stone films and did some Quentin Tarantino movies. And I'm like, I love his style there, but here it just was so odd. It looks
Very odd. And
I don't
even
know why they
Rome is
chose him.
just lit in such a weird way.
Yeah.
Like the sunlight. I mean, I know they're going for like the yellow sunlight kind of look, but it's too
Mm-hmm.
much. And this is why, like, I'm not a big Ryan Murphy fan, as you know.
Right.
This material in somebody else's hands who is a little bit more sensitive and less camp, I think
Mm.
would be a lot deeper and more even. And the
Mm.
reason why this feels very uneven is because Ryan Murphy to me is all about camp. And there's no
Right. Right.
camp in this,
Right.
it's like the wrong material, I think, for this director.
Yeah. Well,
But
yeah.
that said, though, I still have always enjoyed this movie in
Yeah.
moments. It's very rewatchable. Like you can pick a section and watch it, particularly the Italy section.
Yes.
I've watched like a million times because it's just so fun.
And it does really remind me. It makes me want to go back.
Yeah.
to Italy for sure. I think they did. Again, that was sort of the part of the film I think had the most life to it. And I sort of, again, attribute it to being more than just Julia. There's a lot of other people there, and that she kind of becomes more of the center of the film as the other go on to the other two locations. But I'm glad I finally was able to check this off my list. I'm probably not going to read the book anytime soon or, care
No.
about the author, but I am interested in Coyote Ugly. I want to check that one out.
That is a good movie. I will say though, this thing of taking a journey to find yourself, however big, however small, that is something that I always have connected with. And I think travel is a very good way of doing that. No matter what privilege you have or no, I think as somebody who's traveled his whole life, I really value that, that if you can do this, go do it, I think.
Oh, I agree. I was commenting more on the nature of her trip, and her journey just seemed very self-centered. And yeah, there's a place for that sometimes in your life, especially coming after divorce. This is what she did. But I think, to me, if you're connecting with other people and kind of having empathy and getting closer to others beyond yourself, that is really the best way to like grow and recover from some situation, even like a divorce. And I just felt she was treating Javier Bardem, especially at the end of the movie, like very very rudely, to try to be like, no, this is about me. Like, I can't let you into my life and have your love for me help me. No, I have to do this all on my own. It's like, no, Julia, like the point I was thinking where this movie would go is like, no, the point is you meet other people and they help you help yourself. And then you can't make it all about yourself and that everything is just about you, which again, I get she was coming after a divorce and sometimes you need to focus on yourself a little bit. But to me, travel is something where you're integrating with other people and learning from them, which is why I thought the Italy part was the strongest, because I really did feel she was taking a lot of lessons from the local Italians, versus in India, it was more that other attendee at that shrine who she kind of took some things from him. But even that advice I thought from him was like, I don't know, this is something about it seemed a little too self-centered to me. So that's sort of what I mean, not the travel piece and the finding yourself part. I think that is what it made the movie work for me when it was that. But then when it kind of distilled down too much into this like, feeling of selfishness that she had throughout the film, that was kind of like, I don't know, like this is just, it's Javier Bardem. He's never looked hotter. Just go to him. Like, what are you doing? Get on that boat and go to that freaking island.
I mean, but that's the thing, right? Like everybody is going to be on their own journey, right? And I think everybody has different varying levels of selfishness and also grief that they hold. And it makes sense to me that you wouldn't just go after somebody because you have not dealt with all the things that you have to deal with. In that sense, actually, the story is actually pretty grounded, because I think it would be a different movie where everything is worked out. She got all the lessons and life is all hunky-dory. It doesn't work that way in real life, actually.
That's true. Yeah, but this is a movie. So I'm curious on how, like, and yes, it is a real story, kind of. I'm sure she embellished stuff even in the novel. Right. But even that part at the end where she sort of, her self-fulfillment becomes giving money to these other folks in need in Bali. I just felt like money was the only way that, like, her lesson was I can use my money to solve other people's problems, instead of actually kind of relating. And I even didn't think the advice she gave to that Indian woman who was in that arranged marriage of basically just like, suck it up and deal with it, it'll be okay. Like, no, she's not happy. Like, she is about to be potentially trapped in a situation that you were just trapped in, a marriage that you didn't like. You're advising her just to like, oh, I had a vision and you were happy, so do it. It's like, what? Like, I thought that was not only bad advice, but just, again, sort of taking it where all she could think about was herself in that moment and what she needed, and not actually what that other girl needed. That's sort of what I was
I disagree, actually, because in the India chapter, she's kind of questioning the choices that she's made to the point of even leaving the marriage, because she actually has been very self-centered the whole time, even though there have been legitimate reasons as to why she walked out of the marriage. So I think what she's telling the girl is that don't sort of let your impulses guide you. Like, give things a chance and sort of see what happens, because the truth is she doesn't know, actually. And there are moments later where you see the two of them, the bride and the groom, kind of laughing and connecting a little bit. So because she's just reacting based on her own idea that, oh, this would actually be horrible and I'll be trapped here. Well, you don't know that. So I think what she's saying is you got to give it a chance. You got to give it a try. And maybe it's not as simple as that, but I understand from the character's point of view. Again, it's not about good advice or bad advice. It makes sense for this character, because with 2 months of travel, you can't suddenly be, turn into a new person. who will have like totally different advice. It feels that this is what this character would say.
True. And maybe my judgment is coming in because of the cultural impact of this. Again, I don't want to oversay in movement, but this sort of eat, pray, love ethos was definitely something that popped up in the culture at the end of the last decade that turned into something that I feel was kind of ugly. And maybe that is what I'm kind of to ascribe to this, that this was the genesis in a way of this kind of, self-centered kind of movement that I think was started around that time, especially of people that are in these certain situations. And that's sort of what I was coming into this movie trying to not let that get to me. And sometimes it did. And that's why I'm like judging the sense of like, well, she is not just a character in a movie based on a real person. You know, there is sort of this zeitgeist around this whole eat, pray, love ethos that I just have an aversion to. So that was sort of where I was maybe being more judgmental on her character because of what this kind of became.
To me, that's on those people, right? Like people have to make their own choices and
Sure.
then hold themselves accountable for that.
Fair.
Good or bad. So
yeah, I just would have told her, don't get married. And I would have told Julia, get with Javier Bardem. If I was wandering around either of those places. And if I was in Italy, I'd be like, I want some of that pizza because that looks really good.
Oh, so good. So good.
Hey there, it's Alex. If you like the review and discussion Karan and I just had, make sure you subscribe to our channel, Movies That Shaped Us, to get full episodes. Every other Wednesday, Karan and I cover a topic around important people, places, events, and moments in our lives, and then explore it through 3 of our favorite movies. Subscribe right now or follow our podcast on Spotify or Apple Podcasts via the link in the description below. Hope you join us for the journey.